And we are watching the potential for dangerous heat as we head into the upcoming weekend. We'll take a look at that forecast coming up.
Plus, how close is too close? We take a look at local laws regarding where sex offenders can live and what that means for your children's safety.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us at KOAM News at Noon. I'm Caitlin O'Shaughnessy. We begin this broadcast with breaking news as Joplin police are investigating a shooting that occurred this morning at Super 7 Inn off Rangeline and 32nd. KOAM has a crew on scene. We'll bring you more details as they become available. And our top story today, a devastating structure fire engulfs a Neosho business. At about 2:30 a.m. early Friday morning, reports of a commercial structure fire in the 4200 block of Doniphan Drive alerted Newton County Central Dispatch. We learned on scene at Cook's Barbecue Products, the fire was in the northeast corner of the complex in a building that dried wood to be manufactured and packaged for grilling products. The structure that housed the drying process was destroyed, and this was a complete devastation and a blow to their business. Essentially, their product and a large part of their processing equipment has been destroyed. Their main offices and front building of this complex remains intact. Redding's Mill fire were released at about 4:45 a.m. There were no injuries reported. A Pittsburgh man is arrested for child pornography charges. The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force initiated an investigation which revealed that child pornography was being uploaded from a location in Pittsburgh. On August 16th, officers and detectives from the Pittsburgh Police Department arrested a 47-year-old suspect. The suspect was arrested for sexual exploitation of a child, specifically related to the possession of sexually explicit images involving minors under the age of 18. And Chanute, Kansas is eliminating the city property tax levy. This week, commissioners approved the city's 2024 budget. By dropping the mill, the city will not be collecting the $2.1 million annually. City officials expect a person who owns a $100,000 property to save about $400 per year in property taxes. However, the city owns the electric utility and will increase the electric rate by a little less than 16%. Now let's take it over to Chris Warner for a look at your weekend forecast.
Yeah, we are watching the potential for some dangerous heat as we head into the weekend. Quick look, MoDOT camera, 32nd and Rangeline in Joplin. We've got those clear blue skies out there, plentiful sunshine, and we are beginning to heat up. We're going to be a little hotter today than where we have been. However, we have excessive heat watches for all of southeast Kansas and all of southwest Missouri from tomorrow afternoon through Wednesday evening. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Started yesterday at 65, made it up to 87, so a little closer to where we're supposed to be for this time of year. And today we're looking to be right about that point, right about that average point. We're sitting at 80 in Pittsburgh, 82 in Joplin, 83 Parsons, 81 Chanute, 83 Miami, and 81 in Neosho. So again, keeping an eye on that potential for dangerous heat as we head into the weekend and next week as heat index values begin to climb. And unfortunately, we're going to be staying dry for the next several days. We'll have another full look at your forecast here in a few more minutes. Caitlin?
Well, that's a look at today's top stories and weather in the 4 states region. Up next on KOAM News at Noon. Tanya Bach's special report, Sex Offenders Next Door, investigates how the laws vary from state to state when it comes to keeping sex offenders away from schools and the places your children play. And later, we're making chunky cinnamon applesauce in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. Stay tuned. Missouri and Oklahoma have living restrictions for sex offenders, and both states have loitering restrictions concerning schools, parks, and daycares. But what about Kansas? Shockingly, it doesn't have either. So how do you keep your kids safe? KOAM's Tanya Bach talks more with parents and law enforcement in her investigation report, Sex Offenders Next Door. Crawford County Sheriff Danny Smith wants to remind parents that not every home along their route is considered a safe house. That's because the state of Kansas doesn't have housing and loitering restrictions for registered sex offenders like other states such as Missouri and Oklahoma.
So it's definitely a good time to start talking to your kids, including if you got, younger kids. You need to start talking about knowing your address and your phone number, where a safe place is to go if you felt like you're unsafe.
Says he has no idea why Kansas doesn't have stricter rules for sex offenders like Missouri and Oklahoma. He says it's up to state lawmakers to make that change.
Sisters Brittany Wydick and Brooke Hamilton are spending their last days of summer vacation cooling off at the Pittsburgh splash pad with their little ones. While they're busy keeping an eye on their kids, what they may not realize, someone else could be watching them too.
It's kind of unsettling to think, what if someone's just like watching my kids or whatever, and I don't know.
The state of Kansas has more than 11,500 registered sex offenders, with 105 currently listing Crawford County as their home. And for most of them, there are no rules regulating where they can and can't go.
We could be mandated by a court or part of their probation, but as far as registering with the state of Kansas, to date there's nothing that mandates those type of restrictions.
Sheriff Danny Smith says that's not the case in border states like Missouri, where the state statute prevents sex offenders from living within 1,000 feet of a school, park, or daycare. In Oklahoma, that distance increases to 2,000 feet.
When it comes to loitering, sex offenders in Oklahoma and Missouri must stay at least 500 feet away from parks, schools, and daycares. But in Kansas, sex offenders can hang out here with your kids and even live across the street from your child's school.
Just kind of assume there is rules about that, but it surprises me for sure. Wish there was.
Brittany says she was just as surprised as her sister, but as a mom who also has a 10 and 14-year-old, she knows education is key.
Tell her the safe people in our neighborhood where she could just run to that house if anything were to be wrong. Where I know the people that I trust. And I tell her to always keep her phone on her so that I can see where she is, because I have her tracking device on her phone. And I tell her to just scream if she has to.
A scenario Sheriff Smith hopes never happens and says now is the time to start that conversation.
Knowing not to talk to strangers, don't fall for the, hey, I need some help, I lost my puppy, or I need directions.
And it happens so quickly that, one blink of an eye and they could be gone, and it's just scary.
A scary thought for Brittany, Brooke, and parents everywhere.
There are resources available to the public. We learn about an app parents can use to track sex offenders near their home and where their children play. Tanya Bach sits down with the woman behind the sex offender registration desk to find out.
Awareness and education is extremely important.
Michaela Henniger-Mosher is the offender registration clerk for Crawford County. In addition to the violent and drug offenders,
105 of them are sex offenders.
she's tasked with keeping track of the currently 105 sex offenders in Crawford County, most of which do not have any restrictions on where they live.
There's nothing saying a sex offender can't live close to a school or a park or a daycare.
Or where they can hang out, even if it's at a park filled with children.
I had a person call because I had a sex offender move across the street from a school. It was published online, so he was obviously concerned. But because of the Kansas state statute, there's not a lot we can do about that.
Kansas does require registered sex offenders to check in 4 times a year.
So every 3 months, they have to come in person, see me, and register.
If they don't, Henniger-Mosher sends a failure to register report to the county attorney, and a warrant is issued.
Some of them probably aren't as good as complying as others, and that's when she'll make phone calls and try to figure out where they're at, or we'll have a deputy go by and do a check and see where they're at and see if that's where they're currently living.
Sheriff Danny Smith says parents can be proactive with the Offender Watch app. The app notifies you when a registered offender moves into your neighborhood. Sheriff Smith says you can also use it to keep tabs on your kids.
And basically follow your kids, and if they get within an area where there's a registered sex offender, it will send the parents alert.
Alerting parents and preventing tragedies like child abductions or worse.
There are some people that register that are a threat, and I think people need to know where they could be at, where they are at, where they frequent. Just talk to your kids. Talk to them about warning signs, red flags, things that don't really sit right with them.
And ultimately prevent the unthinkable. Reporting in Crawford County, Kansas, Tanya Bach, KOAM News.
You can sign up for the Offender Watch and download the app free of charge from the Crawford County Sheriff's Office website. We've provided a link on our own website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Still to come on the KOAM News at Noon, we see what's cooking with Mr. Food.
And we are going to be tracking the potential for dangerous heat as we head into this upcoming weekend. We'll have the latest on your forecast when we come back. Welcome back to the KOAM News at Noon. So we've got another pretty decent day across the area. And as we head into the afternoon, again, we're going to be a little hotter today than what we have been the last couple of days, but otherwise still not bad. We're a little closer to average. Now, right now, we've got clear skies. We're looking pretty good. We're warming up nicely. We're taking a look at the MoDOT camera. 30-second in range line. As you can see, nothing but blue skies. Traffic moving except for those stopped at the red light. And so we would hope they wouldn't be moving because then that'll cause new problems. And a look at the MoDOT camera. US 60, Missouri 59, south side of Neosho, looking to the west, and you can see no clouds in the sky whatsoever. Our own camera here at KOAM, just north of Crestline, Kansas, also not seeing any clouds out there. We've got plentiful sunshine from the KDOT camera at US 69 and East 520th Avenue, just south of Pittsburgh. But we are still expecting some clouds as we head into the afternoon. We're going to see kind of almost like a mothership of clouds just kind of sweep across the area very briefly, but it'll still build in. This is what we're most concerned about, are these excessive heat watches for all southeast Kansas and southwest Missouri from tomorrow afternoon through Wednesday evening. And within this, we're looking at the possibility of heat index values around 112 degrees. So these could easily be upgraded to advisories or excessive heat warnings. It's something we got to keep a close eye on. If you got plans this weekend, you need to make sure you're taking precautions, keeping water handy, staying hydrated, staying out of the heat where you can. And for schools next week, kids at recess have to keep a very close eye on these temperatures and heat index values and determine whether it's too dangerous to let the kids go out and play. They're not going to understand why. They're like, it's sunny, it looks nice. But we have to understand it can be dangerous. Now, right now, again, we're not doing too bad. 82 in Joplin, feels like 84. That heat index very slight, but that is obviously going to change over the next few days. We're at 81 in Pittsburgh, feeling like 82 with those sunny skies, and temperatures around the region look pretty good. 79 Fort Scott, Nevada, 83 in Parsons, 80 Lamar, 81 Carthage, Neosho, and 83 in Miami. So again, as we head into the afternoon, still looking at highs right around 90 degrees, so about average out there. Then we'll see some passing clouds and some partly cloudy skies through the evening and into the early overnight hours. And we're a little warmer, of course, this evening, and we're still a little bit on the mild side as we head into the overnight hours as well, going back into the lower 70s. And then we kick off the weekend on a very, very summer note with well above average temperatures, pushing into the lower 100s on Saturday and on Sunday. And we're looking at the possibility of seeing the lower 100s maybe extend as far as Monday and Tuesday next week. And we are looking, again, at that dangerous heat. Otherwise, upper 90s as we head through next week. And you see mostly clear skies. We're looking at the possibility, too, of maybe a couple of pop-up storms at this point, Friday evening and Saturday evening next week. But as you can see, it doesn't really do much for our temperatures. Puts us back in the lower to mid-90s, still above average. But, again, we've got to keep an eye on the dangerous heat as we head through the weekend and into next week, especially with kids going back to school, weekend activities, a number of things out there. So just make sure you're taking precautions, staying hydrated, taking breaks from the heat if you do have to be outside, and just keeping an eye on things.
All right, great advice. Thanks, Chris. Well, stick around. We're making chunky cinnamon applesauce in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. It's time to check in with Howard and the Mr. Food kitchen staff. Today, he's making a perfect go-along dish with anything from pork chops to potato pancakes, or for just a yummy snack. It's called chunky cinnamon applesauce. Take a look.
The dish we're making today was taken on an orbit around the moon, aids in our digestion, and is a favorite of all ages. So let me show you how to whip up an easy homemade applesauce that you can enjoy without ever leaving the atmosphere. We start by peeling, coring, and chunking up about 8 apples. As far as the kind of apples to use, I suggest picking up an assortment. That way, your applesauce will have a great depth of flavor. These go into a pot over medium heat, along with some apple juice or cider, a bitter brown sugar, and a stick of cinnamon. After it comes to a boil, lower the heat, cover it, and let it simmer. Make sure you stir it occasionally so everything cooks evenly. As for how long to cook it, well, that depends on how chunky or smooth you like it. Personally, I love chunky applesauce. Once it's done, you can use your homemade applesauce to dress up everything from pork chops to potato pancakes. Or you can eat it as is, which is my favorite. To get this budget-friendly recipe, all you have to do is check out our website and look for Chunky Cinnamon Applesauce. I'm Howard with Kelly in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a cinnamon-kissed way for you to say, ooh, it's so good.
To find this recipe, along with many others, just head over to our website at KOAMnewsnow.com and click on Mr. Food. And now here's a look at the farm market prices.
All right, we want to remind you of those excessive heat watches kicking in tomorrow afternoon through Wednesday evening, and these could easily be upgraded to excessive heat warnings. We're looking at the possibility of heat index values as high as 112 as we head through the weekend and into next week. We've got low 100s Saturday, Sunday, possibly even into Monday. Otherwise, upper 90s next week with those dangerous heat index values. So, of course, if you got any plans this weekend, make sure you're taking precautions. And if for any reason, with the schools back in session, school administrators got to keep a close eye on these temperatures and those heat index values as could be potentially dangerous for kids to be outside at recess. They may not understand why you're telling them to stay inside, but we understand why.
Thanks, Chris. Well, coming up tonight at 5, President Biden is hosting a trilateral summit at Camp David, hoping to build a united front against China. The two key allies say their countries are committed to each other and ready to respond to threats in the Pacific. Plus, Kansas City University Joplin medical students spend the time helping a Water Garden homeless shelter. And some inmates are recovering after their bus crashes in Allen County, Kansas. Join us for those stories and more at KOAM News at 5. And thank you for joining us. You guys have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here Monday morning.